Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Welcome back, everybody. You are now tuned into High at 9 News. Thank you all for joining us yet again to get high at 9 with us, but also high noon on the East Coast. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street. It's Wednesday, December 21st, 2022, and also National Flashlight Day for the winter solstice. To remind everyone, it gets dark at night at peak winter, and flashlights make excellent weapons. Humbug Day for those who know the truth about Christmas, and they also know that it's no match for capitalism. And finally, Crossword Puzzle Day is a reminder that if you actually cheat on one of those outdated Sunday paper word games, nobody really cares. For everyone watching, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to High 9 News on all social media platforms. We're live weekdays on YouTube and Twitch, audio only on Clubhouse. But if you do choose the Clubhouse route, you can always participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story presented. We will be getting things started in just a second here, but first, a message.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit and hustle and diversity of our great city of Angels, and we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
You with us, Rico?
Yeah. The thoughts and opinions of shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of individual speakers and not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in any country, area, or territory, or any of its authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary responsibility or relationship. Our sponsors do not imply or constitute any endorsement by us or the expression of any opinion whatsoever on the part of any speaker on stage. If you're an easily offended person, you might want to tune out now, because up next we have Jason Beck, the longest continuously operating retailer in the world of cannabis. And he's also known as White Gucci in Detroit, Gucci Blanco down in Florida at Mar-a-Lago, and El Presidente to everybody interested in cannabis tourism in West Hollywood. Jason Beck, what do you have for us on this beautiful Wednesday morning? Happy third day of Hanukkah.
Oh, yes, and happy hump day, everybody. You know, today, my story, there's a lot going on in the NYC because following raids on marijuana shops, some question the emergency enforcement rules. When a woman breezed into Manhattan CBD shop called Popped NYC on December 7th, co-owner Evan Farsh said he didn't initially notice the 4 police officers flanking her. She identified herself as an official with the New York's Office of Cannabis Management and said the group was there to search the store. Officers patted Forrest down for weapons and told him to put his phone away where they could see it, and started ruffling around the shop's inventory. In a quote, he says, "I didn't realize it at first, but they were bagging things up," Forsh said. By the time his wife and co-owner Lauren Forsh arrived, 9 law enforcement officers were wearing bulletproof vests, were searching the premises, and told the couple that Popped NYC basically had just got popped and was on a list of stores allegedly selling unlicensed cannabis. And because Popped NYC holds a hemp license, state officials may conduct a search warrant without a warrant. Lauren and Evan Force told NY Cannabis Insider that they were selling some weed products without a license and that officials confiscated those products in addition to hemp flower. They declined to specify what products were confiscated or what the total value was also. However, they said the enforcement blindsided them as the city and state have been tolerating storefronts openly selling weed in NYC for more than a year. The OCM conducted a number of raids on shops allegedly selling illicit weed since the Cannabis Control Board unanimously approved emergency enforcement regulations on November 21st with no discussion. That was the same meeting during which the board also approved the state's first cannabis retail licenses. OCM spokeswoman Freeman Kloplot told NYC Cannabis Insider that the agency is indeed working with law enforcement and taking action to tamper down illegal weed sales. From Buffalo to New York, the Office of Cannabis Management and Law Enforcement Agency have worked together to stop illegal activity through the state, Kloplot said in an email. These efforts have included the seizure of products, the issuance of cease and desist letters, and removal of trucks used for the illicit sale of cannabis. And we will continue to enforce the law to end their operations, they said. Kloplot declined to specify how many stores have been raided and the amount of product officials have confiscated, or whether business owners who were raided are still eligible for cannabis business licenses. Most regulations that state agencies in New York impose have to go through a 60-day comment period before a bureau like OCM can enforce them. But emergency regulations like those approved by the CCB last month are temporary measures and basically effective for 90 days. So from that November 21st date, you have 90 days of enforcement ahead of yourself, New York. They are immediately active. The emergency enforcement rules gave the OCM the right to investigate licensed and unlicensed businesses that officials believe are selling weed illegally. The rules outline what evidence OCM can compel investigation targets to produce, possible penalties for different categories of offenses, and what recourse business owners have in disputing charges. Under the enforcement rules, anyone who submits a license application submits to inspections, which may be carried out by, in quotes, a duly authorized representatives of the office by any peace officer acting pursuant to their special duties or by an actual police officer. Businesses in violation of the OCM rules could face one or more civil penalties, including fees, fines, suspension, revocation of a license, and seizure or quarantine of product, and referral to state or local civil or criminal investigative or enforcement entities. Even though most of the enforcement rules seem reasonable to Lamitte, there are a few things that caught his eye about the regulations and how CCB approved them. For example, a section that lists reasons for which OCM could take action against a licensed business includes, in quotes, the functional management of the licensee, including the financial solvency status of a licensee. Now, that's jarring to Kimlick, who, because legal weed businesses have to fulfill a state of regulatory rules and pay taxes while competing with unregulated businesses that don't have to abide by either of those requirements, a situation that could easily lead to periods of insolvency. Additionally, it's likely that businesses in a newly legalized industry will make errors. And in a quote, it is concerning because even out west, we're seeing now that a lot of these farms and licenses go out of business because the markets aren't conducive to them continuing to operate, Kimlick said. Could something look negligent but was completely unintentional or maybe unknown to the farmer? Does the lay of the groundwork for, does that lay the groundwork for revocation? Kimlick also noted that the CCB discussed some regulatory packages like the proposed rules on packaging and marketing pretty thoroughly, but the board seemed to side in the enforcement regulation with as little discussion as possible. There was also a quote from a well-known California woman, Dr. Dina. She says, rather than taking the whack-a-mole approach of raiding unlicensed weed vendors, authorities should focus on landlords. If they keep enforcing by just going in and taking people's product, they're just going to open somewhere else. What they really need to do is have it so that so that if someone is caught, that the landlord is caught renting space to these businesses, and then therefore they can lose their buildings or get prosecuted in another way. Browner said that way that's what they did in California, and that's basically what stopped illicit stores in California, even though that policy has kind of slowed down and stalled here in California. And in one other note, I did get an early morning tip of some enforcement action that happened yesterday in New York. So now let's see, hold on, here we go, you guys. So basically yesterday, it is reported, not 100% confirmed, but 90% confirmed, that Astor Club was raided yesterday. In addition, and this is one is 100% confirmed, that Hazy House was raided, which is another place that's on the Lower East Side, close to the Astor Club. Now, I heard that someone was actually in there during the time, and law enforcement came in there, arrested a few people, told a bunch of people to leave, but no word if anyone was actually arrested or what type of citations were issued. But I can guarantee you that cannabis was confiscated. And this is Jason Beck reporting for the High at 9 News. What do you guys think?
Go ahead and try to apply.
Lock them up, Gretchen.
Pay your fees and give them all your money and try and think you're going to get a license after this shit. Yeah.
I mean, but the Office of Cannabis Management hasn't even stated that if you're violated of these violations, then they haven't even said if whether or not you lose your ability to get a license. No, they haven't.
Yes, they have. They said
that
this
early
months ago. Months ago that they would be.
There's a total about face that they're saying right now, like you will still be able to be eligible. Like bullshit. You're just gonna take your money.
I agree with Dr. Dina.
Considered.
Yeah, sorry, Rico. I agree with Dr. Dina. I feel like going after landlords does make the most sense. You know, usually if you own one property and you're leasing it to an illegal business, you're probably owning another one and leasing it to another illegal business, right? And so I think that if we're really trying to get to the bottom of this, I mean, I can think of all the illegal operations that are currently happening here in Sacramento. The landlords are common amongst these locations. So, you know, going in and committing a raid, I mean, most of these places will just shut down for a couple of weeks and then start back up.
From what I'm hearing, most of the places that actually were raided actually opened just hours after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually there's quite a big joke out here in, I mean, again, I'm speaking from Sacramento, right? And I'm assuming that this is, you know, continuous across the country, but really the underground, you know, dispensaries, if you will, here in Sacramento, they actually brag about their relationships with the city council members, with law enforcement. They make fun of licensed businesses. It's I mean, cliche, right?
Very much so. Very much so. I did find it interesting too in this article. They did mention that if you have applied for a license or you have a hemp license, then you're automatically on this list that they're actually enforcing. So if you haven't applied for a license or haven't applied for have a hemp license attached to your store, then you're not on the list, and so therefore you can sell all the weed you want, basically, is what they're saying.
Go ahead and try it.
I don't know about that interpretation. I'd have to look into that a bit further.
Well, because in their emergency rules, Gretchen, that's what it's basically saying is that's how they have the ability to go in there without a warrant, is because they've signed off on their Fourth Amendment right, basically, by applying for this license.
I gotcha. I don't agree with the concept of going after landlords. I don't think that's going to fix the problem whatsoever. And frankly, I don't think you can hold accountable people who aren't committing the crime. I don't see how
you could hold a landlord 100% accountable.
Why?
What you gonna trap out of? You ain't got a house.
100% you could hold the landlord accountable.
Absolutely
no way.
wrong.
I've dealt with this. Yeah, I have dealt with this in many different facets over the years. Yes,
No.
100% they can hold the landlords accountable. They can force a landlord to evict their client or face criminal prosecution.
If you have ownership of that property, you are responsible for what goes on.
And I don't think it matters at all going after the landlords. I think these folks are just going to go out there and open up another store, another place. I don't think
they are, but there's definitely a landlord persona that is more tolerant of these types of tenants, and a lot of them take cuts off of
hell yeah.
I'm sure. They're doing. Yes.
Yeah. I know what's going
on. Now, if there is something like that in there, then law enforcement can go after those landlords even harder, because they are basically a co-conspirator with an illegal activity, and they can prosecute them that much harder for all the landlords out there that are doing that.
Yeah, if they're charging exorbitant fees for you to hold your business in that location, you better believe they got some shady shit going on. Like, just think of all the social equity applicants that waited 3 years to get a provisional license, like here in LA, and they're paying between $10,000 and $20,000 a month, going broke before they can even legally operate. They knew what the fuck was going on behind closed doors. Come on, man.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I love in the comment section in Clubhouse. Melissa Green is saying, if we can't hold state mandated testing facilities accountable, why hold landlords accountable? I mean, I guess that's part of a whole nother story that we're also going to be covering later today. But nonetheless, coming up next, he is the dope dad. That's right, Rico Lamitte. When he is at home, he's constantly taking naps with his little one, playing with crayons, and making oatmeal. When he's not doing any of that, you can find him at a financial conference or a TEDx convention, babysitting grown-ass adults, changing their diapers, and patting their little sourpuss faces with pacifiers, because all that they want is just a little bit of extra cheese. That's right, is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
That was super funny because I actually did make oatmeal this morning.
I know. I saw the cameras in your house.
CCTV, never trust it. All right, so my headline of the day comes from Canatech Today. A new study says evidence is lacking in cannabis hangover claims. Okay, y'all, let's take a hypothetical journey. It's Friday. You had a long week of work prepping for an upcoming presentation the future of your career depends on coming up on Monday. Burned out, you agree to join coworkers for just a few happy hour drinks at the bar next door to blow off steam and maybe get to know that cute new intern a little better after finding out they've been taking post-grad classes at your alma mater. You two have something in common. Just a few happy hour drinks wraps up with a 5 a.m. dive bar exit flanked by 3 people you've got no recollection of ever meeting, all 4 of y'all drunk asses complaining about the bright-ass sunrise fucking up everything. On that lonely-ass $50 Uber ride home, you realize you lost your wallet and vaguely remember saying something really fucked up to that intern you'll probably end up regretting later. Oh, shit. That Monday presentation. What day is it again? It's just Saturday. You're good. You blocked off Sunday for the finishing touches on that presentation, so you know you got this. Go home to crash, wake up around 3:30 with a killer headache, and your stoner homies in ugly sweaters are banging on the door to get ready for an epic holiday 420 sesh y'all been planning for weeks. Fuck. But it's just weed. You'll be fine. The party was lit. You got stoned beyond belief and ended up passing out early without an alarm clock set. It's 10 a.m. Sunday morning now, and you got 2 things on today's agenda. Veg out on some epic breakfast tacos from the local taco stand and finish that presentation. The tacos are fucking delicious because when are tacos not delicious? But when you get back to the crib, you space the fuck out. 3 hours of mindlessly flipping through YouTube conspiracy theory videos go by before staring at the wall for another 2. At this point, you're completely brain dead and start planning out an excuse for Monday's planned absence because you know you ain't getting shit done before that deadline. Hey, boss. Sorry to bother you on a Sunday night, but I got COVID. I don't think it's safe for me to even come into work tomorrow. We've all had a massive weed hangover at some point that totally killed the next day's productivity. You're half asleep, lethargic, and no, you can't be trusted with anything important. It's only temporary and way better than the same situation after a night of cheap ass drinks loaded up with sugar. But it's a hangover nonetheless. Or was it? Well, after a recent Australian study released by Normal, is it to believe that weed hangover that you claim to have experienced is a goddamn lie and just another product of anti-cannabis propaganda? The article reads, while there is ample evidence alcohol use can result in hangovers, researchers in Australia have found the same is not true for cannabis, despite what cannabis opponents may claim. Per the release, the majority of available data fails to support claims cannabis may potentially impact either cognitive function or performance of safety-sensitive tasks 24 hours after consumption, according to a review of the scientific literature published in the Journal of Cannabis and Cannabinoid Research. Researchers reviewed data from 20 studies involving 458 subjects. Selected studies assessed subject performance 12 to 24 hours following THC dosing. Investigators failed to identify any evidence of so-called THC-specific next-day effects in 16 of the 20 studies reviewed, leading them to the conclusion of a small number of lower-quality studies have observed negative or impairing the next-day effects of THC on cognitive function and safety-sensitive tasks, while higher-quality studies and a large majority of performance tests have not. Overall, it appears there's limited scientific evidence to support the assertion that cannabis use impairs next-day performance. While I usually don't go against the grain with a lot of these studies backing the trends and standpoints of prohibitionists, I've had plenty of weed hangovers. Though Sundays, generally my smoke out recovery day, if I go hard on a given Friday or Saturday night, I'm usually calling it quits early evening to make sure that I'm well rested and prepared for a heavy work week ahead. I know a lot of us, all of us are different. And at the moment, there's no pure calculation as to how quickly we'll individually recover from an hours-long sesh with the homies. But I'm interested in hearing what everybody else has to say on this one. I know I'm not the only weed hangover truther in the room. This is Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News. What do you guys think about this one?
I can honestly say the only time I've ever had a weed hangover was after some hot dog water distillate edibles. Other than that, smoking it, no. The hash rosin edibles, no. I feel great the next day. And the only thing I mean by hangover, it was just it was a little hard to open the eyes. Didn't really want to get out of bed. But
like
then you
get
moving and it's gone. But yeah, but that's all for me. And that's being honest.
So
I've been groggy. Go ahead, Manndie.
I've been a little groggy, but I would have to eat a tremendous amount of edibles for that. I mean, during judging season for Emerald Cup, we probably do a couple 100 milligrams a day because there's so many edibles to get through in a short period of time. And so, I felt a little bit of it, but it's just more like a little tired. I don't feel sick. I don't like the word hangover. I feel like
you feel groggy.
You feel really bad.
Well, if we're not gonna call it hangover, what should we call it?
It's called a weed over.
A weed over, I guess. Yes. I don't know. Let's coin a term, but hangover.
It's called a weed over. It's called a weed over.
I mean, how do you feel when you take too much Benadryl? It's kind of like that. Like you just feel a little sluggish. It's not like you feel nauseous. You're not going to be barfy all day.
You mean like too much promethazine?
Yeah, sipping on that lean. Yeah, Manndie on that lean.
I mean, I just get groggy. I just get tired, and it's only happened when I've consumed edibles, especially late at night, to help me sleep. Personally,
I will say that the infusion method on the edible plays a huge role. So distillate will probably make you feel that way. Using something that is fast acting, like edibles that have the unlocked technology in them, those usually won't leave you feeling sluggish.
Well, what about sugar-based edibles? Because sugar-based edibles immediately float into your bloodstream. It's kind of like mainlining an edible.
Yeah. If anything, I get a lot of people, because edibles naturally have an intense amount of sugar, right? Historically, we've used a lot of sugar in our edibles to cover up the weedy flavor. Now that the weedy flavor has been abated, it's kind of like we're still overcompensating with a significant amount of sugar in that. I mean, eat a box of C's candy. Tell me how you feel the next day.
A whole box?
Yeah. My dog did it last year.
Oh, man, that's not good. Dogs should not have chocolate.
I know.
Yes.
I know.
Gretchen, you don't smoke, but you're an edibles person. What do you say? Have you ever had a weed over the next day?
I've never had a weed over. The closest I've had to that was when I did not realize I had done a ton of Delta 8, and I felt like crap.
Oh,
but
of course you did, because it was Delta 8.
Like, it was rough. It was not what it was not like a alcohol hangover, but it knocked me out for almost 24 hours. It was kind of crazy.
Delta 8, huh? Yeah, I mean,
you
and Stone got something in common, huh?
Get out of here.
Stone had a Delta 8 hangover too.
No, sir. I don't fuck with that. I already told you, I get really good California weed here in Texas, allegedly.
It's probably from Oklahoma. They're just calling it a California weed.
Stop it.
Yes, indeed.
It's California weed by their definition if it's a strain that came out of California.
In all fairness, if I was in Texas, I'd tell everybody it was California weed too.
I know where mine comes from.
All right.
Where do you get your Delta 8 from?
You been to the farm?
What? Listen.
You been to the farm?
Listen.
In Delta 8?
Listen, Linda.
Up next.
All right, Rico, let's roll.
It's a spicy redheaded conservative, well known in DC circles for cooking up excellence in the kitchen, but don't you dare let that apron and pretty smile fool you. She never backs down from a verbal sparring session with pot-loving libs across the aisle. You know who it is coming to the stage next. It's the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider, Gretchen Gailey. What you got for us today?
Good afternoon, Rico. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment, and we just can't let safe banking go. So here's another story on it. Congress keeps ban on DC marijuana sales while failing to act on cannabis banking and expungements. A congressional spending bill released on Tuesday not only excludes the marijuana banking and expungements reform that advocates had hoped for, but it also preserves a rider that blocks Washington, D.C. from implementing regulated adult use cannabis commerce. Adding to the frustration of advocates, the slew of additional drug policy reforms that the House included in its version of various appropriations bills it advanced earlier this year were all omitted from the final deal. The omnibus development represents the second major setback for supporters of the Safe Banking Act during the lame duck session after the proposal was excluded from the NDAA earlier this month. The hope was that appropriations could serve as a vehicle for protecting banks that work with state legal marijuana businesses. However, that didn't pan out. And despite Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's last-ditch effort to put cannabis banking reform in the omnibus, as one senior Democratic staffer put it last week, negotiations failed to produce a package that includes the measure. Adding insult to injury, the large-scale spending legislation continues the policy of preventing the District of Columbia from spending its own local tax dollars to legalize adult-use cannabis sales, despite the fact that earlier versions of spending bills that advanced in the House and the Senate did not the rider. The ongoing federal blockade and the resulting inability of local officials to enact cannabis sales regulations has led to a proliferation of unlicensed marijuana retailers in the nation's capital. President Joe Biden has angered advocates by proposing to continue the ban in his first two budget proposals. Meanwhile, a rider that's been annually renewed since 2014 to prevent the Justice Department from using its funding to interfere in the implementation of state-level medical cannabis programs was kept intact in the omnibus bill. But a key House passed provision that would have extended those protections to all state and territory marijuana markets was left out. The article goes on and on and on and on, explaining all the bad stuff. And it's just a bit crazy that, all of this has been left out. It's no shock to me that they refuse to continue to let DC enact their adult use market. It passed with 71% of the vote in 2014, and we have still not been able to enact an adult use market. And that's a bit crazy. This Gretchen for High at 9 News.
I mean, Gretchen, does it surprise you though?
No.
Is any of this a surprise?
It's
just more of the same.
Biden at his finest.
That's right.
And it just shows that nobody cares at all on the Hill about cannabis reforms, especially when it comes to the district. I mean, this rider was not included in the House and the Senate version, and they still kept it in for the final version, which is insane. Why are they doing that?
They're trying to sneak it in, hoping, because those bills are so big that they're not going to find it in there. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to just sneak one by them.
Well, we kind of notice. I mean, what do you mean? How to sneak it in? I mean,
Dale, have you ever?
No one cares about DC. It doesn't matter.
Dale, have you ever snuck anything in, Dale?
And
Snuck it into where? You mean to prison or jail or into my mom's house?
A sentence into a legislative bill.
Oh, you mean? Yeah, I've seen it happen. It's what makes me sick about politics. Shit seems to creep into these bills that at the last minute somebody makes a wink nod deal and shit ends up in these bills and no one knows what it's going to do as we as practitioners try to go out and deal with it.
Well, the only one who has been keeping this rider on board has been Joe Biden. It's not the House. It's not the Senate. And the word is that, they don't like having cannabis on display in the nation's capital because this is where tourists and lots of people come. I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world. And it's just led to the proliferation of I-71 stores.
Hold on, because of tourism, and that's where people come. I mean, if that's the case, they should be banning all of the consumption and sales in Las Vegas, because there's more people that visit Las Vegas every year than visit Washington, D.C.
This is the nation's capital. I mean, steps from the White House, you're smelling this stuff everywhere. And I guess they think it's a bad look, but I think it's a worse look having all these unregulated stores around the city instead.
There's plenty on display in DC that's far worse than cannabis.
that part is true too. The swampy mess out there. Swampy mess. Thank you so much for that story, Gretchen. We're going to pay a quick bill and we're going to get right back to the news. When you want to grow some of the best weed in the world, then you must start with the best genetics in the world. Go to www.dnagenetics.shop to order regular, feminized, or autoflower beans. All of your favorite DNA genetics cultivars such as Kosher Kush, Skywalker Kush, and oh yeah, Chocolate Truffles Shuffle. Boasting more cannabis awards for their award-winning genetics than any other company in the world. Remember to go to www.dnagenetics.shop to see why our terps don't lie. Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get high at 9 for 10% off your full order.
This cannabis product extraordinaire is also a serial cannapreneur at Camilla, Cannagram, Cannamami.org, and the Women's Canna Awards competition. Also an Emerald Cup Edibles judge, you can call her Carmen Sacramento, making sport out of searching the globe for the perfect cannabis and psychedelic edible experience. But as a crusader for female entrepreneurs, her true love is showing the world cannabis, motherhood, and executive lifestyles truly do go together. Manndie Tingler, what you got for us on this beautiful Wednesday morning?
Hello, friends. How's it going? So this morning, I'm bringing to you a article that's kind of near and dear to my heart. One of that I have helped a lot of new businesses do over the years is develop their community action plan. So this article comes to us from ctpublic.org. The headline reads, "Marijuana dispensaries plan to give thousands to Connecticut charities. Some never got a dime." So by Connecticut Public's Accountability Project found scant evidence that cannabis businesses satisfied some of their prior commitments for community support. Inside an old factory in Waterbury, a creaky freight elevator brings visitors to the Make a Home Foundation. At its headquarters, there are dining room sets, couches, all sorts of furniture. And the founder of the charity, along with her husband, said that she was watching Oprah one day and saw the story of a female veteran who was sleeping in her car. They were beginning to transform their hobby of collecting used furniture into a charitable endeavor. Today, Make a Home provides furnishings to people in need, including veterans and families fleeing domestic violence. The foundation operates with a modest budget. The founders said that they were therefore surprised that a potential donor was right down the road. Caring Nature won a competitive license from the state in 2016 to sell medical cannabis. As part of its pitch, the dispensary indicated in its license application that it would support several local charities, including Make a Home. But as of this summer, the foundation hadn't received a dime. The founders didn't know that their charity was named as a recipient. She said, "I was surprised and I was disappointed." Nearly all of the 18 medical marijuana dispensaries operating in Connecticut made similar plans during the licensing process to give back to the community, but there's scant evidence that many of those commitments were satisfied. Connecticut Public contacted more than 50 organizations named as potential beneficiaries, ranging from food banks and hospital foundations to local police and fire departments. 35 indicated that they have no record of getting money or other contributions. Pettengill, the founder of the organization, like many administrators, didn't know that the dispensaries named them as intended recipients. In 9 instances, organizations did receive donations or other assistance. Several other groups didn't respond or wouldn't comment because they keep donor information private. A dispensary in Bristol listed AIDS Connecticut as one program it intended to support. The group has no record of receiving its contributions, according to John Mertz, CEO of Advancing Connecticut Together, and operates AIDS Connecticut and other social services. If they used it as a way to get their license but never actually followed through on the promise with folks who licensed them, then I would say somebody should have an issue with that, Mertz said. The state awarded a limited number of medical marijuana dispensary licenses in 3 separate rounds between 2013 and 2018. As a part of their review, state officials asked dispensary owners how they would give back if awarded a potentially lucrative license. Community benefit plans contributed to each applicant's score, becoming one of the several components for which the state awarded the bonus points. Connecticut Public obtained the licensing records through a record request made under the State Freedom Information Act and reviewed each applicant's state goals for charitable giving. Those records show that some dispensaries provided only broad plans, identifying an initiative or type of organization they would intend to support. Few provided a timeline or listed a dollar amount that they would give, but many named specific organizations they planned to help, either with money or with support, such as participation with educational programs or public awareness campaigns. And it would be really great if we could post this visual. I'm not sure if you can do that, but it lists the different dispensaries. Some of these names may sound a little bit familiar. There is Curaleaf on this list, The Botanist, and a couple of other dispensaries that I believe are owned by Trulieve. Tracking donations can be tricky as many charities don't divulge their donations. Contributions appear under an individual's name, making it challenging for any organization to completely rule out receiving money, particularly smaller sums. However, those who run local organizations said that they know where most contributions originate. In Newington, the business entity that won a competitive license 3 years ago is open to such medical marijuana dispensary in the town and planned to give $5,000 to local civil servants such as police and firefighters. Fire Chief Jeffrey Trommer said that every donation to the department comes through his office and none come from the dispensary. Consolidation in the cannabis industry. So what happened? How did intended donations fall by the wayside? Part of the story is that most dispensaries have changed hands since winning their licenses from the state. In the case of that dispensary in Newington, the original owners sold their license to another entity, Fine Fettle, on the eve of their grand opening. The Healing Corner, the dispensary in Bristol, was similarly acquired in 2019 by a major player in the industry, Trulieve, for $19.9 million, according to the regulatory filing. We reached out to the original owner of the Healing Corner, but didn't get any response. A spokesman for Trulieve did not respond to questions, but said in an email that the company contributes to numerous charities. We are proud of the Trulieve's team community efforts. made to date and those we will continue to make in Connecticut, where our local team members live and work. Acreage Holdings, another big name in the industry, acquired 3 dispensaries across the state, paying between $10 million and $15 million for each, according to the document filed. So this article is going to continue to go on, and it names quite a few big names in our space. What's really interesting is, I think that this is a commonality that we're seeing not just in Connecticut, but just in general across all applications. Business operators absolutely get pushed into a corner where they have to write a community action plan. And so I would love to get some feedback from the team here, or even our audience members, about any dispensaries or cannabis business license operators that are in fact fulfilling their promises, and maybe even those who still aren't. What say you guys?
Hold on. First of all, can anyone name a business that has actually fulfilled its community action plan that was on their application?
All of mine.
All of yours have?
Yes.
I know of one company that I can say without a doubt filled their community action plan, and I only know of one.
Is anybody doing like any checks like after the fact?
Well, that's part of the thing, is that these local regulators aren't going after that, or any type of enforcement on that portion of their business operations. The enforcement is all around whatever DCC is telling them in regards to your operating hours, who you can sell to, is your product compliant, this and this and that. It's not, oh, are you operating in the format that you originally intended based off your application? I haven't seen any enforcement from any municipality do that yet.
No. And I think that's really just because there's so much more, quote unquote, important things for them to be tracking. I mean, first and foremost, they need to be figuring out how to either help us and support us, or just making sure that we're not throwing stuff out the back door illegally. I mean, the community action plan is so deep, and they're not wrong in the article. They talk a lot about tracking back donations. And let's be honest, most of these businesses go in and write these plans, but they talk about paying donations out of profit. Well, if we're not making profit, how are we supposed to donate?
And I would say to you, Jason, I don't think any of us here on this panel knows whether or not, there's so many businesses across the country to say that nobody is, taking care of their obligations to their community action plans.
I'm saying, if I only know of one, and Manndie can name one or two.
Knows whether or not.
I can actually name more than that. I can say that nobody is, taking care of their obligations.
All right, I think it's fair to say a majority.
Easy.
Manndie can name one or two.
I can name several. But
does someone have their YouTube up?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what someone's getting some feedback. I don't know.
But I would say, I do know of some dispensaries that do absolutely give back to the community and are working hard to be a good stewards of their space.
I don't know what's.
One of them is definitely Humboldt Patient Resource Center. They've actually been named Business of the Year over all businesses in Humboldt. It's not dispensaries, but it's, every single business in that community, because they work so hard to make sure that they are a part of the community, that they're providing plants and medicine for the patients who need it. And, they're also participating in their communities. So I hate for us to come out and say that nobody's doing anything. I think that's unfair. And give me a second, Rico. I also think Manndie's 100% correct. I mean, these people also go in with great plans and hopes and dreams, and are just getting crushed by taxes and no profits, and aren't able to execute in the way that they would like to. And that is why we need a regulated market. I don't care how many guys want to stand out there and call me the devil, because I don't believe that we should leave all these trap shops open and let them just run amok. They are killing people
nobody's calling you the devil for that.
And follow the rules. And these people who are trying to follow the rules cannot do that because they don't have the money, because they have to compete with all these other folks who are not.
There's a lot of other factors that go into that. And I agree with you, Manndie, like 100% with that. So is the problem over promising and under delivering here?
I mean, it's multi-layer, right? I mean, because all businesses, big or small, large investment or no investment, all have to contribute and put some sort of plan together, right? And so what I would say is if you're a big giant company and there's even one article out there in the world about all the millions of dollars that you just raised and how amazing and successful your company is going to be, you better be ready for someone to be looking at what you're doing in your community. I mean, first and foremost, this industry was built on the sense of supporting communities. And most cannabis business operators are really amazing actors and do a ton to help invest in their own communities. So let's just point that out first and foremost. But if you're out there in this world and you're writing a community action plan and bragging about how well your company is doing, and if you're publicly traded, you especially don't get any grace on this. You just don't.
Right. I mean, it's what makes, I guess, like Curaleaf and Trulieve like easy targets on this, because like all you see like in the national like headlines is how much money they're making. How many?
Well, I think the bigger problem, bigger problem is that you have these application writers, right? And they're the ones that put these kind of plans together. And everyone wants to have big hopes and big dreams and say that cannabis is going to do all these amazing things. And at the same time, you get graded on what you put together in your community plan. So you want to have the best possible thing in there. And even if you can only do 10%, ultimately it's about getting that license and getting that score on that thing more than what it actually is as far as actual follow through with what you're doing in your community.
Yeah, and I think it's also equally important. I mean, like I was saying, if you're out there talking about how much money you've raised and you're not following your community action plan, like whatever. I mean, there's plenty of folks out here in California that I have written their community action plan, and I can tell you right now, they had no intention of following it. I actually wrote one for a pretty big business out here in Sacramento, and right after that license was granted and submitted, I said, okay, let's kick this plan into action. And I was told in a couple of years, we'll get to it.
Yeah. Oh man, Manndie. Oh, that's so rough. Thank you so much for that story, Manndie. We appreciate that very much. Coming up next, we have a 35-year practicing attorney with 23 years in California cannabis space. Dale is a former member of the Club Fed, serving more than 52 months for cultivation and intent to distribute to a handful of terminally ill patients. He started his cannabis adventure as the co-owner of the California Medical Research Center and is now a founding partner of Armada Law Corp. It is the Dale Schafer.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Today's story involves Lowell Farms and Cypress Manufacturing Company, and the heart of this problem is in the testing mess we have here in California. It seems that some people went out and bought some products marketed under Lowell Farms and I think prepared by or manufactured by Cypress. And it turns out the package said something like 35% THC, and an independent lab said, wait a second, it's under 20. Now, this is filed, I think it's filed in Los Angeles, but it's filed as a class action. Now, it's not a class action yet. It's going to have to be certified by the court. But it seems like if there's enough people who went out and bought this, it was packaged at 30+%, and it turns out it's 20 or less, then they have a nucleus of operative facts to work off here. They're probably going to get a class certification. Now, in California, we have several consumer protection laws that these cases are going to be brought under. One of them is called the Unfair Competition Law. It's in our Business and Professions Code, section 17200. And if your advertising or the way that you're marketing your products is unlawful, unfair, or fraudulent, then you violated this particular law. And unlawful in California, our regulations require that whatever you put on your packaging has to test within 10% of that level. So if you got 30%, 35% on the label, 10% of that's 3-4% off of that. And if it's 35 on the label, it's 20 on the testing, you violated that statute. So you violated the unfair competition law. We also have a false advertising law here. It's Business and Professions Code, section 17500. And this involves false or misleading advertising. It's one of the problems we have here, because if a defendant knows or reasonably should know that what they're putting on their package is untrue, they violated this law. Now, the kicker in California that brings these cases forward is the California Consumer Legal Remedies Act, which is in our Civil Code, Section 1750. And if you have violated these other unfair competition laws or the false advertising laws by putting out misrepresentations about your products, then here's the kicker. You can be sued, and the defendants are responsible for the attorney's fees for the plaintiffs. Now, this is under the guise of a private attorney general theory that we call in the law, where the citizens can go out and enforce the laws and get paid their attorney's fees for it. Now, these are typically brought as class actions because you can pool together your efforts. If the facts are the same and the causes of actions are basically the same, you can bring hundreds of people into these things. And the attorneys don't spend a lot more time working these cases up than they would for one person. So it's a lot more lucrative, if you will, for law firms. And some of these fines can start at a minimum of $1,000 per violation. And that can get pretty hefty if they sold hundreds of thousands of these 8s that are marked as 35%, turn out to be 20. So one of the things I've been trying to warn people about is litigation is going to kill businesses if they're doing marketing and no one's telling them, hang on for a second, you can't be doing that. Or as in cases like this, if you're going out shopping testing facilities to give you a test result you like, and you know or should know the test is bullshit, then don't be surprised if you get served with a complaint. Now, this is the pleading stage. All we've got the allegations, if you can believe them. We'll have to wait until they respond and see what's going to happen. But my prediction is they're going to file cross complaints against everybody, especially these testing labs. Because if you're responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps millions of dollars in damages here, you're going to want to bring everybody to the party and have them bring their insurance companies. And I hope that these companies have had legal representation to help them draft their contracts so you can seek indemnification from people like a testing lab who got your ass in so much trouble by giving you a 35% test when it turns out it's 20. So this is another long-term project I'm going to be talking to you about. So let's open it back up. What do you all think about this?
I mean, Dale, this story we was covered a couple days ago too, but I'm glad to have you here because I brought up a thought that I believe that these companies are going after the wrong company. Like, instead of going after the company that's producing the product, they technically should be going after the lab and the state, because the state is certifying the lab and the lab is the one that's producing these numbers. It's not the manufacturer. What do you think about that?
Right.
Well, under these consumer protection laws, the easiest target is the person who owns the brand and the manufacturer. Okay, because they're the ones that are putting these products out. Now, the testing lab, it may be a tougher sell under these statutes. So you allow the manufacturer and the brand owner to cross complain against them or ring them in because they're in privy of contract. Mm-hmm. You look for the easiest path you can, and the brand owner and the manufacturer who produce these things are the first target that are covered by these statutes. And then you just throw a net out and bring everybody to the party and all their insurance money, if they've got it, their sugar daddies into, and all that stuff.
So you're saying it's basically like the fish bait to cast a wide net as soon as you get some chum in the water.
Well, when you've got attorneys' fees available, you're going to get attorneys who are going to go in and gin up cases. And then when you got people who are out shopping for phony bullshit COAs, and you don't think someone's going to come back and get you, I mean, you got bad advice. You should stop smoking so much weed in your board of directors meetings, or give it a break and wait till Sunday morning with Rico, have some oatmeal and let your head clear.
I mean, some of those boardrooms, they might be smoke-free environments too, Dale. That might be part of the problem, is there is no weed involved.
Yeah, that might be part of the problem. Some of it's just being stupid. If you've never been to a marketing meeting where someone has run something past you and you think you've lost your goddamn mind, you're not doing that, then you just haven't attended some of the marketing meetings I've been to.
Yes, indeed. You ready, Rico? Let's keep it moving.
Let's do it. An industry full of negativity littered with folks on both sides of the aisle aiming lower and lower. This dope dad from the great purple state of Texas decided he'd be hitting the high road and just say no to local Delta 8 dab sessions. He's the host and co-creator of a new show with the same damn name, so make sure all of y'all check that thing on out. Stone Slade, what you got for us on this beautiful Wednesday morning?
Thank you, Rico. Thanks for getting the Delta 8 straight. Today, my story comes out of right here in Austin, Texas. After this last election cycle, legal cannabis in Texas seems further than it's ever been. So with less than a month before the start of the upcoming legislative session, advocates aren't very hopeful that Texas will expand medical cannabis access. And this has prompted some, for now, to focus on improving the existing program. During the 2021 legislative session, lawmakers expanded the state's inadequate medical cannabis program to include patients with PTSD and all types of cancer as eligible candidates. Should have been included from the get-go. Over the last year, the demand has grown, and the current program's ability to sufficiently supply the state's medical cannabis patients has outgrown. That's because law currently allows a minimum of 3 licensed dispensaries to operate in the state, and so far, the great state of Texas has 3. One advocate that's fighting for more access is Jeff Young. He's an Air Force veteran with the Veterans Cannabis Project. Jeff said the existing licenses are lagging behind. The demand is there. The legislation and laws are already there. We just need more access to what's been approved. The state's medical cannabis program is called the Compassionate Use Program, or TCUP. It operates under the Texas Department of Public Safety. During a DPS commission meeting last Thursday, Wayne Mueller, chief of DPS Regulatory Services Division, said the state is looking to open up applications for more licensees in mid-January, but he also included that no decisions would be made on applicants until after the 2023 legislative session in case any changes are made to the program. Mueller said, "We didn't want to unintentionally get in front of the legislature and what plans they may have as far as changes to the compassionate use program." Mueller said it would not be our intent to act immediately on those applications, since that would put us squarely in the middle of the legislative session. Young said, and I have to agree with him, that this approach is essentially kicking the can down the road. There's people that have been waiting weeks, if not months, to get their medication, he said, and to say, hey, let's wait and see what happens, it's a simple dereliction of duty. Young, who I mentioned before, is an Air Force veteran himself, knows the benefits of medical cannabis firsthand for treating his symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and even mild autism. He said, "It's greatly improved my life, even if it's just sleep or mood day to day. Again, it comes down to a controlled, educated decision on using a tool, but when you use it properly, you can improve your life in many different ways." In order to get prescribed medical cannabis here in Texas, prospective patients must go to the state-approved physician who's qualified to prescribe THC to patients through the program. When TCUP was formed in November of 2017, there were 8 physicians and 4 patients. Now, 5 years later, there's nearly 39,000 patients in the TCUP registry with 643 physicians. This just really shows you that the powers that be here, and yes, Jason, the red, not quite purple state of Texas, really don't see cannabis as a legitimate medicine and alternative to the opioids that are freely prescribed across the state. We all know what an underwhelming, over-restrictive medical cannabis program does. That's right. It just feeds the illicit market and forces Texas medical patients to take a risk and find decent quality medicine on the street. I'm hopeful, but I won't hold my breath that the lawmakers will expand TCUP in the upcoming legislative session. Even though cannabis decriminalization has Republican support here in Texas, prohibitionist Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has historically opposed easing cannabis laws, stating all the typical reefer madness propaganda jargon, and even blocked a bill last year that was overwhelmingly passed in the House, would have lowered the criminal penalties for Texans possessing small amounts of cannabis to the same classification as a traffic ticket, because he saw it as a pathway to adult use legalization. Drives me crazy. Prohibitionists tell us all the time that more research needs to be done before legalizing or descheduling. I say, show me the research that made you schedule this plant in the first place. I'm Stone Slade, reporting for the High at 9 News Hour.
Stone, thank you for covering this, man, especially from a Texas point of view. I was flabbergasted when y'all told me it's not really Greg Abbott is running the show down there. Is there any way that you guys can get the lieutenant, what is his name, the lieutenant governor or whatever his name is,
Dan
out of the
Patrick,
way?
man. Lieutenant Dan. I don't know how he got reelected. Guy kills me.
Yeah. Don't know.
I mean,
listen, I'm fine if Texas doesn't get it together, because we have places we need our stuff to still go to. And so I'm just saying, I'm fine.
So Manndie, in other
crap
words,
alive.
Texas.
Hey, when I interviewed the Colorado governor last year, and I was talking to him about, what are some of the highlights of legalized market that, I could tell people in Texas that are scared. He's like, shit, I love Texas being illegal. All the Texans come up here and they smoke our weed and have fun in our mountains. And he was all for it. He's like, I'm going to hate it when you guys legalize.
Yeah.
In all fairness, I think he's misguided on that answer, because I think the people that are traveling to Colorado for that type of purpose are actually driving, and they're stopping in Oklahoma to get better weed before they have to go and buy dried out weed in Colorado.
Stop it.
Just saying.
That Colorado hatred it runs deep within your veins, Jason.
It's just it's a dry dust bowl for weed, and I feel bad for the people that have to smoke it.
Hey, if you get it when it's fresh,
I concur.
Which I do, and it's good.
That's why they have
fresh
extracts out there.
They do have good hash. They do have good hash. Colorado is amazing for hash.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not for flowers, in my opinion.
Yes, indeed. Jason, you gotta close us down, my man.
Yeah, we're gonna do this. Anyone else got any miraculous pieces of wisdom on this?
I love Texas.
Let's save it for another episode.
I would just say that I think if y'all want cannabis legalized in Texas, you need to somehow find a way to blame it all on Mexicans crossing the border and the cartels, and that's the way you're going to get it.
Listen,
hey, you know what? I'm not mad at that PR strategy right there. I'm not mad at that.
I'm right. It
leads to more fucking racism, man. Like,
hey,
yes,
you do what you gotta do, Rico.
You guys, they're about to crush us as a cannabis economy.
So Stone, you mentioned that there's 8 doctors in Texas that are able to write these recommendations. Has that number increased, or is it still at 8?
No, that was when it started. 8 doctors in 2017. Now we're up to 643. But still, there's in the
643 doctors in Texas. And you almost have more doctors in Texas able to write recommendations than you do patients in Texas that are able to access their medicine.
3 places people to get their medicine, and it's not working.
With 5 more on the way, correct? 5 more on the way someday.
Someday, yes, but kicking the can down the road and waiting to see. I mean, the guy's not doing his job. This shit's been approved to do, but he's going to wait and see after this legislative session in case anything changes. Like, do your job, dude. I mean, come on.
I get it. I guess the only thing we can say to those people in Texas is that every day that you don't have cannabis in your town, you are a day closer to getting cannabis in your town. And on that, thank you all for getting high at 9 with us today, and every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience, our supporters. Thank you all for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to all our haters for always talking shit about us, and a huge thank you to our sponsors, True Classic, LAXCC, and DNA Genetics. Thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing today, and thank you to cannabis for giving us a reason to do this on a regular basis. Thank you to Cloud Media Partners and Zaza Simone holding us down in Clubhouse, and thank you all for helping us create this space in the cannabis metaverse. And thank you all for regularly getting high at 9 with us. Run it, Adam.
Run it.